for those folks out there listening to this whole discussion, and we talked a little bit about different classes. There's physical sunscreen, that titanium dioxide, zinc oxide. In the US, we have all this other organic or chemical filters, right? And at this point, the FDA basically did two studies to show that some of those chemical filters actually penetrate through the skin and reach the bloodstream, and it's systemically absorbed. And for that reason, and they want additional study to look at the safety issues, right? So this is where we are right now. But why don't I'm gonna let you talk about this, Adam. Is that dangerous to have those filters being absorbed into a bloodstream?
Yeah. So my initial response to every patient, especially when those two papers came out, I did get a lot of questions about that, especially that first week. My first response is correlation does not equal causation. And then, of course, I go on because I think to leave them at that and walk out the room would probably leave myself with many bad Yelp reviews. What I mean by that is just because
they would just say you're a philosopher instead of a technologist, but go on.
It's weird. I mean, I was wearing a toga and everything when I said this and had a little wreath around my head. So I think the point of that is just because something's there doesn't mean it's dangerous. And what these studies showed, and I think more of anything, it was to show that they could detect these UV filters at the nanomolar concentration. We're talking about a billionth of the mole.
It's like, I think it's 0.5 nanogram per liter, that concentration, that level.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It is such a minuscule amount. Part of this was to show that we could detect it there and realize they were detecting after maximal, optimal, ridiculous use that no one does. This was like multiple times a day, full body, the amount that was applied per, centimeter, per square centimeter was more than anyone actually does. So this was optimal use. Could we actually find those nanomolar concentrations? The answer was yes. Now, the second question, and really the bigger part, is just because it's there doesn't mean it's actually causing harm at that concentration. Remember, concentration dictates toxicity, not the actual ingredient. And they couldn't prove that. And actually, in the second larger study, the authors went as far to say that probably with some hindsight from the first paper where they didn't really talk about that, we're just showing it's there. We're not insinuating that this causes cancer like some mineral-based sunscreen companies put out in email blasts to their consumers, that this study was insinuating that, and absolutely neither was insinuating that. So I think it shows, yes, the skin is a portal to the inside, that the skin is not pure armor, that there is a connection to all organ systems, and that is a portal to the systemic vasculature, the blood supply. So we need to better understand what does that mean, but also realize, because there hasn't been anything new in the UV filter world for a long time, these filters have been around for a very long time. And so, yeah, if they're getting the blood now, guess what? They're getting the blood before. And so we have not seen some dramatic increase in various types of cancers in association with sunscreen use. So I think that it's very important to take these for what they are, to follow through and actually do the research now that we know they're there, better understand what that means. But we also should not overstate the conclusions from both studies, which I think is being misinterpreted as that because it's in our blood, that is a problem. We don't know that. That is where we are.
Yeah. And I think you raised. So just getting back to repeat that, I think we should educate the folks about, what the actual dosage. They were using 2 milligram per centimeter square. And, but reality, most people only use quarter that amount, basically. So that's number one. Number two, they were using it 4 times a day. And most people hardly remember putting just on once. Right? So that's the difference. Right. That's what you mean about the maximum usage. And I think you hit it. You're so right. Basically, talking about exposure, right? The phrase. Like, I always like to say that if you take one ibuprofen or Advil, if you have a headache, that's very therapeutic. That's very beneficial. But if I give you like 3 bottles full of the stuff all at once, you're going to have a GI bleed. You're going to end up in the hospital. That is the exposure level, right? And I think, unfortunately, like, it's unfortunate that a lot of those social media, a lot of those newspaper reporting, media reporting, they take this one report and they just sort of extrapolate and create this fear, basically. Yeah, yeah.